Hello, everyone. Good morning. Fresh out of the NFL. Breaking news: the Jacksonville Jaguars have fired head coach Doug Pederson after his third season with the franchise. But they've also decided to retain GM Trent Baalke. We're gonna dig deep into this today because, oh boy, I wanted to do weekly recaps for the Jaguars, of course, going to college, trying to do some things for the school, out of school, whatnot. It got pretty tough to do the weekly recaps, especially since, with all due respect to the Jaguars organization, we sucked this year, and I just didn't want to commit extra time. I wanted to focus on Campus Gridiron. Thank you guys for supporting that. And speaking of more support, you guys could check out gridironnerds.com for weekly NFL articles and trivia. That's right. I just recently wrote an article about Kirk Cousins' realistic destinations for him in 2025, but a lot of other writers share their thoughts on the website, as well as you can play weekly trivia as well. Again, this is gridironnerds.com, as you see on your screen. Have some fun, test yourself on some trivia, and read some fun NFL blogs. All right, moving on to an article I may have to write about soon, and that is the Jaguars finally firing Doug Pederson after his third season. Forever grateful for 2022. That wild card win is probably my favorite Jaguars game of all time, next to the divisional round win against the Steelers in 2017. Probably my all-time high as a fan was that playoff push. I knew in 2022 when the Jaguars came back and beat the Cowboys to win in overtime, the whole Rashawn Jenkins pick six, I knew that team was going to make the playoffs. And if you think about it, Doug Pederson getting hired, I mean, not a lot of people were wowed about it, but it seemed like a pretty decent hire. Okay, he had good stints with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he had some really bad stints. Jaguars, we're going to give you an opportunity to kind of prove yourself, and he did in 2022. And I don't know what happened, but clearly in 2023, they were 8-3 at one point. The Jaguars were. They were the 1 seed in the AFC for 3 hours. And then I don't know what happened, but ever since they lost that Monday night game to the Cincinnati Bengals last year, team's just gone down the toilet. And I don't know why, but that loss was really monumental, at least towards last season. And I was pretty quiet. No way did I think Doug Pederson was going to get fired this early on in his tenure, especially after the beginning of last season. I'm like, okay, this is great. No need to worry. You lose a game to the Bengals, you lose a game to the Browns. Who cares? The first time I opened up about a change was week 15 last year when we lost to the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. Only scored a touchdown, terrible red zone management. And this is where I'm beginning to realize not only are we on a 3-game losing streak, but this offense, something isn't clicking. And maybe it was because Trevor Lawrence was trying to play through an ankle injury. I have no idea. But that was when I realized, hey, the play calling's becoming a little stagnant. Why aren't we capitalizing in the red zone? Why is ETN and Tank Bigsby getting like the same amount of carries? And this is last year, Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby, awful rookie season. Thank goodness he gratefully improved this year. Horrendous rookie season. And he's still getting as many carries as he was this year, pretty much, when he was significantly worse. So I'm like, okay, let's not panic. But if we had to fire Press Taylor, I would be okay with that. Season goes along, we collapse, miss the playoffs at 9-8. Now I'm like, okay. I want to give Doug one more year because I feel like firing him after this collapse. I mean, it was pretty worthy of a firing, don't get me wrong. But I was like, okay, we'll give him another year. And if you guys have been following the channel and watch like all my Jaguars live streams and stuff, I said this. The Monday Night Football game this year against the Bills back in week 3 was going to either make or break the franchise. If they won that game, I thought they were going to go on a Cinderella run to the playoffs. If they lost that game, I knew it was going to be an awful year. And what a shocker, they got blown out 47-10. that was the first game where I said, okay, Doug's got to go. And season continued to go along. I've seen some pretty embarrassing losses to the Vikings, to the Jets, to the Raiders. Now, granted, with at least the Jets and the Raiders games, you can make an excuse. Crap, Mac Jones was playing. So you didn't have much of a chance to begin with. But, man, I don't know. Jaguars finished their season 4-13 with an overtime loss to the Indianapolis Colts yesterday. And then they went on and fired them this morning. Pretty interesting because he was the, I guess, second head coach to get fired. Jerome Mayo got fired yesterday from the New England Patriots. Shane Steichen and Brian Daboll are keeping their jobs. So in a class where we may not have a lot of head coaches getting fired, this is pretty big that Doug got canned. Do I see Doug with another team? He's just a short stint guy. I think if you wanted to hire Doug Pederson right out of the gate, you have a Super Bowl contending team. For example, I'm not saying he's going there, but if the Cowboys were to move on from Mike McCarthy, I think Doug Peterson's a good fit in Dallas. I think he's a good fit in Tampa Bay if they wanted to fire Todd Bowles for whatever reason. I think he is a coach capable enough to, if the team is ready to compete, I was going to say the Bengals. I don't know. But Zach Taylor's not that great of a head coach either. Neither here nor there. If he was going to take over a team that can contend for a championship, boom, immediate option. However, his shelf life is the shelf life of milk out in the sun. You got to give him 2 years tops. 2 years tops. Same thing in Philly. 3 straight years of playoffs, 3 straight years of playoffs, and complete fallout. Eagles missed the playoffs, had to do a retool, hire Nick Sirianni, and now they're a playoff contender again. I'm hoping the Jaguars got to take the route that the Eagles did. They were above 500 for 2 years, had the awful year, could hire a new head coach. And we're going to get into head coaching options. There's obviously one in mind I really want that I think the majority of NFL fans want, Patriots and Bears fans included. Probably Saints fans will want to crack at him too. We will see. And that obviously being Ben Johnson. So again, before I move on to topics, Doug Pederson, again, forever grateful for 2022. I am not going to talk about the rest of your tenure because thoroughly not impressed with the roster we had. Now on to retaining Trent Baalke. As Shad Khan announced this morning, Doug Pederson fired. I'm thinking, all right, well, Baalke's going to be fired in the next day or two as well. No. And this is what's shocking. I wanted either both to be fired, or I wanted to keep Pederson for one more year and see what happened. Is that crazy? I don't think so. Now let's talk about, okay, Doug Pederson underperformed with the roster that he had a collapse in 2023. Jaguars just outright sucked in this year, starting the season off 0-4. Again, not necessarily wanted to keep Doug for another year, but compared to Trent Baalke, I think I would have been okay with this. The reason why I wanted a new GM is because I wanted a new GM to make a splash right away. I wanted him to make sure he nailed the head coaching hire as the new GM. I can't say, thank you, man. I just can't believe that this team continues to keep a GM that has really struggled over the past 2 seasons. Let's take a look at the free agent signings from this year. Eric Armstead was a disappointment. 3-year deal worth over $50 million. He didn't really do much. Trying to help the D-line. Traded Roy Robertson Harris midway through the year. I was hoping Armstead, he kind of picked up statistically, but didn't really do much. Gabe Davis caught 2 touchdowns. Both were in the same game. Didn't even reach 400 yards this year. Got injured. And I mean, whether Trevor got injured or not, the pass offense was just brutal with Mac Jones, with Trevor. It didn't matter. Once Davis and Kirk went down, and even Evan Ingram was out for a good stint, the pass offense was just dead. The good thing was with Evan Ingram was that I have a lot more confidence now in Brenton Strange than I ever did. Just like Tank Bigsby last year, Brenton Strange did not have a good rookie season at all. So I was very pleased to see him finally get more reps, and I think he just needed more reps to get better and gratefully improve. So I'm happy with Brenton Strange and Evan Ingram. No complaints about the tight end core heading into next year. Kirk's contract is going to expire. I expect Christian Kirk to walk, considering if he didn't get injured, he was rumored to be traded to the Steelers. So I think Kirk's going to leave. Davis still has 3 years left on his deal. We could buy him out maybe after next year. Not sure what's going to happen there. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. is a success. Let's take a look at the rest of Trent Baalke's draft picks here, okay? Our second best rookie this year was our kicker, Cameron Little, who, shout out to him yesterday, set the franchise record for rookie points scored. Yeah, I mean, Little, great. BTR, great. He should be in the Pro Bowl over Jerry Jeudy and Zay Flowers. It's ridiculous he's not. Let's take a look at the rest of the Jaguars draft picks here. Jaguars draft class. Okay, let's take a look at the rest of these. Mason Smith was fine. I mean, again, he was fine, and he really made a name for himself after Roy Robertson Harris got traded. Jerron Jones was great as well. He was probably the third best pick of the draft behind Thomas and Little. Jones had an interception. I believe it was in the Packers game, and he's very good in zone coverage. I like Jones. The fact that Ronald Darby at any time of the year was getting more playing time than him was pretty ridiculous. Wrapping up on free agents from last year, but Ronald Darby, pretty much the entire fan base knew that one was going to be a flop. There you go. It was clearly. Jerron Jones pretty much took his spot at the end of the year. Ronald Darby, 1-year deal. Thank goodness he's not going to come back. And Darnell Savage was fine. You know, wasn't bad, wasn't good. Let's continue on with the draft here. So Jones was the third-round pick. Fourth-round pick was Javon Foster. He had limited playing time, moving on. Jordan Jefferson, same thing, limited playing time, moving on. DeAndre Price was one I was hoping would really get some playing time. Prince is good. DeAndre Prince, a corner out of Ole Miss. I was hoping, okay, and I know Jones got injured for a few weeks, so I was really hoping that Prince would take that extra step forward. You know, not wanting to put high expectations on a fifth-round pick, per se, but he could have definitely played more. Callum Robinson was injured all year. He will be a good special teams guy. Although I've been very impressed with Parker Washington in the return game. But Robinson, going to add some more speed when he fully recovers from his injury. Little was a 6th-round pick, and the 7th-round pick was Miles Cole, who, 7th-round pick, so I'm not going to harp, but he played in a few games, didn't really do anything noticeable. Okay, so there was a draft class. Hitting on 3 out of 7 is not a recipe for success. And Baalke's drafting, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of, he drafted Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. Because listen, Aiden Hutchinson is obviously a better player than Trayvon Walker. But when people come up to me and say, is Trayvon Walker a bust? I say, no. He's definitely not. He's a Pro Bowl caliber player. He will be a Pro Bowl alternate this year, so he might make it. He's had double-digit sacks in back-to-back seasons. Like, he's not a bad player. He's not a game changer like Aiden Hutchinson, but to call him a bust, I think, would be a little ridiculous. But he has that dangling over his head. Trent Baalke also has Trevor Lawrence hasn't fully broken out yet. That's a huge thing. And, I'll at least give Baalke credit. He tried to bolster the offense, signing Davis, trying to build the offensive line from inside in. Antoine Harrison's been a good pick, but he's also hasn't really done a whole lot for this offensive line. Cam Robinson realistically should have been traded last season. Instead, they waited an extra year, so his trade value went down. I believe when he got traded to Minnesota, I believe it was only for a 5th-round pick, where he could have been like a 4th or 3rd-round pick a previous year. They extended Walker Little. That to me didn't make sense, considering I would like the Jaguars to draft Will Campbell with the 5th overall pick this year. So, yeah, I really don't know what the direction this team's going to go. Balky, I applaud you for trying. Spent money. Davis and Armstead. Darby, horrible signings. Darnell Savage, whatever. The rest of the signings, whatever. Drafting outside of Thomas and Little, meh. Previous year, Trayvon Walker, and the rest of the picks didn't really do much. 2021, you had Lawrence, you had Cisco, but, nothing out of this world. Tyson Campbell was another one from 2021. But, again, great. You're going to hit. If you are at this level of the NFL, you're going to hit on some draft picks. But you aren't going to build a Super Bowl contending team. And that's the problem, is we all thought after 2022 the Jaguars were going to make that leap. They didn't. And now you're kind of stuck in this. Are we good? Are we bad? Do we rebuild? Do we try to make a quick retool and go back to the playoffs? I will say the Texans and the Colts are not threats to the division. So if Jacksonville really did improve this team and got the right coach, I'd say, I don't want to sound delusional or anything, but I do think that there is a potential opportunity for this team to make a run for the playoffs. I don't think they'd make it, but I think they could make a run, maybe win 7-8 games next year. I think that could be realistic. Maybe go 9-8, win the division, or sneak in as the 7th seed. All options are on the table. The only issue is outside the AFC South, the rest of the AFC is really good. And you got to expect Miami and Cincinnati to continue to be in playoff contention. Indianapolis isn't terrible. They're going to be in playoff contention. Depending on how the Jets approach this offseason, they could become a decent team. I just, it's weird. The only teams in the AFC that I think are going to be bad next year are the Titans, the Patriots, and maybe the Browns. The rest of the teams in the AFC are going to be, and the Raiders too. And then the rest of the teams in the AFC could be fighting for playoff spots. So, Trent Baalke, you need to nail this head coaching hire. This is the most important head coach that Trevor Lawrence is going to have in his career. Now, this is the other thing I want to say about Trevor. 3rd head coach in 5 years. What quarterback is going to properly develop with going on his 3rd head coach in 5 years? That's tough. That's tough. That's really brutal. On top of Trevor missing a good chunk of the season this season, playing through an injury for the back half of last season as well in 2023, rolled his ankle, played injured 4 games, missed a game. I mean, it's brutal, man. The Jaguars are in a weird spot. And again, not against firing Doug Pederson. As the season went along, I kind of realized, at first I'm we collapsed last year and we're starting off terrible. Fire Doug Pederson. That was my original reaction if you hear me talk about the Dolphins and Browns games earlier in the year. But as the season went on, especially when we rolled out Mac Jones, I'm like, okay, this isn't really his fault. If we were to fire Press Taylor, I'd be fine with it. Keep Doug for another year. I'd be fine with it. You got to fire Doug. Okay, but I want Ben Johnson. Aaron Glenn wouldn't be a terrible pickup either, both the Lions coordinators. But the issue is, again, I want a quarterback coach that's going to help Trevor Lawrence develop. And that's what the head coach has got to be. I know the head coach isn't revolved around one player or anything, but Trevor Lawrence should have a significant say in who's going to be the new head coach of this team, in my opinion. Gerard Mayo would be great as a DC if we decide to move on from Ryan Nelson after a year. Ryan Nelson, very disappointed in him as well. Defense somehow got worse since Mike Caldwell left. That was kind of surprising. And yeah, Press Taylor, I mean, he should have been gone last offseason, but he's going to certainly be gone this year. The worst offensive play caller in the NFL, in my opinion, besides Van Pelt, the Patriots offensive coordinator. So I really don't know where this team goes from here. I guess I'll make another live stream when the head coach is announced. Definitely no one within the organization is going to take the reins. I feel like if anyone was to take the reins as like an interim head coach, it would be Ryan Nelson. But why would you give it to him when, again, the defense from 2023 to this year really took a step back? I don't know why you would reward him for such a position. I'm not against keeping Nelson around for like maybe the first half of next year, see how he does, and if he continues to struggle, then get rid of him. I'm very like willing to give coaches an opportunity. But Press Taylor, if he hasn't been fired already, maybe they fired him like with Pederson. What do I know? But yeah, Press Taylor is going to be gone. And again, Doug, thank you for what you've done for the Jaguars organization in 2022 and the first half of 2023. But the rest of it, that Bengals game onward to yesterday against the Colts, just going to completely forget about the rest of that 10-year. You know, I'm sorry, but 8-3 collapsing and missing the playoffs was the biggest joke in franchise history. And the fact you just tried to throw money around and try to sign Gabe Davis and Eric Armstead, and both of those free agents just absolutely flopped. Not good. Really not good. And again, Trent Baalke, need to nail this head coach. If you don't, your job's on the line. I would strongly recommend bringing in Clint Kubiak of the Saints, Ben Johnson. That's going to be the one I want. Offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. I actually just read right before I pressed live, the Bears are going to be interviewing Ben Johnson. So Johnson's going to make his rounds, and he's going to want to head coach, you know, a young team like the Bears, like the Jaguars. So it's going to get interesting. It's going to get interesting. The Patriots, even though they fired Gerard Mayo yesterday, I think Mike Vrabel is as good as a Patriot. That's such a Patriot head coaching hire too. Firing Gerard Mayo just to bring in Mike Vrabel is kind of crazy. But because I feel like if you give Gerard Mayo time, he could turn into a head coach like Mike Vrabel. Speaking of Gerard Mayo, I think I briefly mentioned this, but again, bring him in as a defensive coordinator. If you were to fire Ryan Nelson and bring Mayo in as a DC, I would be totally on board with that. As a head coach, no, but as a DC or an assistant, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up this video. I just want to quickly talk about Doug Pederson getting fired, talk about how bad the Jaguars season was, how bad they approached last offseason, and ways they can hopefully improve this upcoming offseason. I guess Baalke's going to stay. Not my call. I would have definitely gotten rid of him, but Baalke's going to stay for another year. Shah Khan, I just hope you know what the hell you're doing, man. I really do. Come on. 2 playoff appearances in 10 years. This is ridiculous. I would really like to see some consistency here. Just please, just start making this team better in any way possible. Don't just throw money at free agents. Please benefit the team. I'll talk about the Jaguars in a future mock draft video. I'll talk about the Jaguars when we hire our new head coach. I'll be making an NFL playoff predictions video. The playoff bracket is set. We'll be predicting the NFL later this week as well. Super excited. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Monday and keeps track of all the NFL news I'll be going on, because right now, Gerard Mayo and Doug Pederson, the only 2 head coaches to be fired, but I don't know, man. I think we're going to get a couple of interims getting the can as well. I think the Saints and Bears are both going to fire their interim head coaches. The Jets probably will as well. So a lot of head coaching news, and the playoffs begin this Saturday at 4:30 when the Chargers take on the Texans. I will let you guys know when I decide to record my playoff prediction video, but thank you so much for tuning in, and let me rant about my favorite football team because, man, I just want to see some consistency. That's all I want to see from this team moving forward. Made the playoffs in 22, finished above 523, just to finish 4-13 this year. Doesn't make sense, man. But I will make another video about the Jaguars when the new head coach is announced. So until then, take care. Campus Gridiron also coming out later this week. We're going to be predicting the national, we're going to be talking about the national championship game next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. So a lot of football content coming out. And then once football season ends, going to try to shift gears towards hockey as the playoffs approach there as well. But until next time, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.